It is 6:30 p.m. and I am calling this meeting to order. I'd like to recognize James Brannigan of
Whetstone Station
Restaurant and Steve Lemke, resident. And we will waive a mention of the rules of procedure. And Peter, you will advise us of a new addition to the
yes,
agenda
so
tonight.
The new addition is going to be actually relating to James and an alcohol permit for the Whetstone Station at the Baconfest festival. I'll let him explain it.
He'll explain that, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
that'll be, we'll get to it shortly, but that will be added to new business.
Okay.
Is there any other new business before the board tonight that is time sensitive? No. Are there any changes to the agenda order tonight?
Yes, we're going to move the executive session from the end to the beginning of the evening prior to new business.
Okay. Any other changes?
Not for me, no.
Okay. So the first item of regular business is to approve the regular minutes of the meeting of Monday, July 24th. We were all here, if I remember correctly?
Yep.
Brand, I got a minute? Yep. And so we can all sign these minutes. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Any motion to accept the minutes?
I move that they be accepted.
Is there a second?
Certainly.
So Richard and Veranda. I am going to say that with regard to the purchase of the backhoe, that I would still, I would like to see for the record a memo that outlines the process, the reasons for purchasing it this year, the decision that was made, the fund that it came out of, and the impact on the fund, and the life. And that doesn't need to be in the minutes, but I still would like to see that for the record. It's how we have done these things in the past. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So the second is to approve the Wednesday, August 2nd special meeting with Veranda, Gabby, and Richard present. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Richard.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
You and I can't sign that. The third minutes that we are approving are the minutes of the regular meeting of August 14th. Richard and Gordon were present via conference call. The rest of us were here. Is there any comment on these minutes? Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
I so move.
Richard. Anybody?
I'll second.
Miranda seconding. Actually, Richard can't approve those minutes because he wasn't. You can't move.
Yes.
You can move to approve even though he wasn't.
Richard was
Oh, he was here. Sorry.
Gordon
Right. Okay.
was
Gordon was not. Gordon and I weren't. Right. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry. The next item on the agenda is executive session. You were going to give me some wording for that.
So we need to have two motions. One is to,
So the executive session, I would seek a motion to find that premature general public knowledge of a contract negotiation could place the town at a substantial disadvantage. Is there a motion?
Can you repeat what?
So to go in, a motion that premature general public knowledge of a contract negotiation could place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
So moved.
Gordon. Is there a second?
Second.
Gabby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session at 6:35 PM. Per 1 VSA section 313A1, and invite Peter Rood to join us.
I so move.
Richard is really moving tonight. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
And Veranda is seconded. So we will go into executive session at 6:35 PM.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier.
Yeah, we'll just move to it. At 7:14 PM. And I will entertain a motion to delay our decision on selecting a contractor to work with us on the renovation of the town office pending answer to a legal question.
I so move.
I'll
Richard
second.
and Veranda again. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. The next item on the agenda is a Baconfest permit.
Oh, great.
Sorry you had to wait so long.
That's okay. I have copies for you all if you want to see it.
Sure.
The original is on top. Baconfest, this is our 4th year at the festival, pouring beer, and in this case, we're also pouring wine and mixed drinks, Bloody Mary. So, we've had a lot of success. We follow all the DLC rules. We have double fencing, we have ID checks, we have a perimeter where only the drinkers can be. It's never been a rowdy crowd. It's been nice. There's been live music. It's a nice festival.
Great.
Do you have any questions in general?
This is your, what year?
Fourth, he said.
4th year.
4th year, yeah, doing it.
So,
Is there any regulation on the part of the bartender in regard to the amount of drinks a person can have?
Usually, our bartenders are trained to notice any signs of intoxication, and they're all licensed and by the state. So we don't serve anybody who looks like they're intoxicated, and usually most people will bring a designated driver in their experience.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
Sounds great.
I know. A fun
Go
thing
for
to be
bacon
dealing with
cheeseburger
tonight.
right now.
What I see here is that this requires the city clerk's signature. And so I think all we need to do is move to accept this request and then have Penny sign it
I
tomorrow.
move to accept the request.
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very
Thank you.
much. And I think she'll send it along to the DLC.
You've got
We
the
can,
original.
yeah, we can leave that for Penny to
So
sign and,
leave that
and,
there.
Okay.
Did you include your fee with?
I'm gonna send a check directly to them.
I bring, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, to the, okay.
to the DLC, yeah. I'm gonna send them a check tomorrow.
okay, enjoy.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is 2 vacant planning commission.
That's the signed one that Peter
Okay,
wants to
yep.
hand off to him. Sorry.
Commission positions, I do not have a recommendation on either position, so I think we should just table this until the planning commission gets to us with some recommendations.
So has the planning commission been reaching out? Do they need our support? in
They've been
finding
reaching out to some people,
Um,
and in fact, a couple of them were at their commission meeting last Monday, and they were engaged, but I
Okay.
don't think there's been a final connection between the interested parties and the commission to confirm this, so I think we'll wait for their recommendation. Peter, you are on for draft records retention.
So, this is something that Penny and Ellie had been working on for some time now. Starting in the late winter, early spring, Ellie started doing a bunch of work documenting everything that we have basically in the building, both in storage in the attic as well as in both of our safes. Because per state statute, we have to, before any documents or anything else can be destroyed, we have to have an inventory of everything that we have, because there's various legislation that regulates those things and when and how they can be done, or if. So throughout this process, Ellie and Penny have been doing a lot of review of other towns' policies as well as what the state statutes say. And so what they have presented here, and it's not explicitly intended for a decision by you tonight, but they do want it to be put out there publicly, to be discussed, and for input to be given. It is still in draft form, they're still finalizing it, but this is one of their
Are
final
these their
drafts.
recommendations?
These are their recommendations to you as a board regarding this policy. So it's going to be have multiple points to the policy. One is that there's going to have to be regular inventory maintained now that Ellie has brought us up to this point that we know. At this point, I believe she's around 90% complete as far as the inventory within the building. So that will have to be something that's maintained by most likely the assistant town clerk. And then the other portion of it is following the state statutes regarding how long documents must be kept in paper form, which specific ones need to be kept, and of the ones that must be kept, which ones need approval to be disposed of, and which ones can be disposed of after that time has expired.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what this document goes into, is explicitly detailing each of those various, because according to statute, from what Ellie was explaining to me, there are certain things that we have to keep, say, for 7 years, after which those can be destroyed without needing approval by the board or by anyone else. Then there's other things that have to be kept for 3 or 4 years, but if they're to be destroyed at that point, it needs to be presented to you as a board to get your approval to dispose of them.
But so the action that this is seeking eventually is
Is to create
the
a
acceptance of the policy.
That's correct.
But we don't have to make the policy.
No, I mean, this is a draft
Suggesting
copy.
possible.
They're suggesting it.
Is there a discussion about, but electronically documenting any of some of this history as a means of retaining it?
That's, as I understand it.
And I'm not talking about the minutes from
Yep,
necessarily.
As I understand it, from what they've explained to me, at this point in time, the legislature of Vermont has only approved very minimal digital record keeping.
Okay.
What specific records are permitted to be kept digitally, I do not know yet. That's something I'd have to inquire with Ellie or Penny. But at this point in time, I do know that the state has approved very little.
Has this draft been distributed to us electronically?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay.
absolutely.
I
I didn't see it.
And
It's been in the
so,
full distance
What
library.
is it, what's it named?
It's actually a bunch of number of documents that were in there, but they're all related to this specific item on the agenda.
So would it say of draft records retention and disposition in the?
But it wasn't in
does.
our.
No, it is. It
It's
was
like-
draft
yeah.
records,
It's
retention,
been there.
inspection copy, town, couple other things.
Yep, it's been in there the whole time.
Well, I shall read
No,
it.
but I'm saying, was it in tonight's?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, that's what
really,
this
and
is.
so
I didn't
I
see
went
it.
through
where,
every one of them.
I didn't see it, so I just.
I'm missing something.
They were all labeled as 7C.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Roman numeral?
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
I think I avoided that one for some reason.
Yes,
Four
because there's
documents.
there's 7
Okay,
documents.
so
Oh,
I will,
okay,
I
I saw
will
it.
commit to reading
Yeah.
that
I'll read
and
it.
we'll put it on, we'll have to get back to it.
So I read through these and I actually had a number of questions, but it sounds to me that the questions would be directed to Penny.
That's correct.
And
They
that
just-
they would be worked into her next draft to present to the select board.
Correct.
Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Perfect.
So I think if other people have questions, you might want to speak with Penny
Good.
Good
directly, and then she would prepare a final summary.
I would actually encourage you to direct them at Ellie. Ellie's the one that's
Ellie,
been
Okay,
writing this and then getting
Mhm.
Penny's approval from it.
Okay.
So I would direct the questions to her. And they just asked me because of my role in the town to present it to you
Okay.
guys.
so I think there's a lot of
Right.
good work in there. I do think, I noticed there is some work that needs to be done. One
Yep.
of my questions was electronic, retention of requests and response to requests for information. Do we at least have that, as, as opposed to the information itself, so. And there, I have a few other
Sure.
things that I looked at today, so, okay, so we agree that we get back to Ellie with questions, comments, any edits, so, okay. Moving on to old business, we have Steve Lemke with the River Corridor Bylaw update.
Slide up here for a second.
Thank you.
So, a month ago, I came to the board and said our original plan, our updated plan was to send out a postcard to the 450-plus people who have properties in the corridor pretty soon, get the meeting in September, and then vote on the adoption or not in October. I now think that I need your counsel on something. I have been so focused on the people who have property in the corridor, but as I have reviewed the process with Wyndham Regional, Agency of Natural Resources, and others, and looked at the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund requirements and things like that, it strikes me that we might be better off doing a broader outreach to the entire town, rather than to just the people who have property in the river corridor. Because if the bylaw were to be adopted, obviously it would impact the people with property. If it's not adopted, it means that we leave 5% of the ERAF funds on the table. And if it's $1 million disaster sometimes, that means $50,000 doesn't come to the town. So I think our focus being, my directing all of this toward the property owners in the corridor is ignoring a major portion of and a reason for doing it.
And you're talking about an informational meeting.
I'm talking about getting focusing, instead of focusing, we gotta get something out to these people who are in the corridor. That doesn't change, but I think it was ill.
You just want to broaden the constituency.
I think it would be wise to get an article in the Gazette at the next opportunity, which would be late October, early November.
The deadline is submitting is October 1st.
Okay, so I would offer to write an article for the Gazette to run past you for approval, and get an article in the Gazette and or other outlets as you see fit, right? I've also agreed with Wyndham Regional Commission to write a layperson's outline of what the bylaw really means. I don't want to hang up, I will hang up to 32 pages, but nobody's going to read 32 pages. So
That would be most welcome.
And then I'd like to do a 1 or 2 page document saying this is what it is, and then frequently ask questions so that they can have those. And
Sounds great.
then push them toward the website, for A&R and others.
Wonderful.
In addition, on Thursday morning, Shannon Pitlick, who is the Southern Vermont river scientist who works out of the Agency of Natural Resources office in Rutland, is going to come down, and she and I are going to ride the river corridor, all right, so that we have a clear definition of the seasonal streams, the 50-foot buffers, what is the bank, top of bank, 50 feet from top of bank. If the bank goes up 100 feet, is that the 50 feet, or is it 50 feet after that? So I think it's really good that we're willing to come and review this, and also because Agency of Natural Resources understands that mapping for the corridor is pretty tight mapping when you're looking at a 50-foot thing. So we're going to look and see in a few areas how relevant, how accurate is the mapping, right? Because there are terrain maps, there's GIS maps, there's A&R maps. So before this gets way down the road and then we find a whole bunch of discrepancies someplace, I think it's wise that she and I take a ride, okay? So my question tonight is that would mean then that we would push all of this forward so that it would be articles and community outreach, as well as the people in the river corridor, and then put it up for adoption in mid-November to late November. Have a public meeting and then put it up for adoption in late November, maybe even as late as early December.
At a special town meeting?
No, it doesn't have to have a special town meeting. We just want to have a special, it's a special town meeting in the sense of calling a meeting where the town anybody
Hearing.
interested can come and do it.
Here,
But not a special town meeting in the sense of, you know, like March, you know, or something
Right.
like that. It's not up for vote, it's up for
Right.
public comment. So what we would do is then have that public meeting for public, to take public comment on the potential corridor bylaw in early to mid-November, and then vote on it, on adoption or not, in late November, early December.
So how does that vote happen?
You vote.
Oh, you mean for the board?
Select
It's not
The
a
select board
public-
adopts the
Because what you do is it goes from public
We hear
opinion,
public.
I
then
get
it
it.
comes back to this table, you say, okay, based on that, I feel that we should, and then each of you
And we're
does
making
that.
our decision,
And you
with the
make your
public's
deci-
involved,
You
the
make,
public's having
Right.
known what we're talking about.
it's
what's
your
going on.
decision to make,
Yeah.
but it's after taking public comment.
Good,
It's certainly a timely topic.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will remind you again, that 3 counties in northern Vermont, Windsor and something else, were declared federal disasters.
Right.
And in a federal disaster, the federal government pays 75%, ERAF funds are 17.5%, and the towns pick up the rest. And that's where that 5% comes in, if the number's, you know, a nickel or $1 million or more, so.
Yeah. Steve, we seem to get a lot of, the town seems to get a lot of attention, town residents seem to pay attention to what's being written in the Commons and the Refomer. So you may want to reach out to them to also, it might be a little more timely in terms of when we decide to do the public hearing. Give them some information in advance, a couple weeks in advance, that might not coincide with when the Gazette is published.
Sure.
So I would, and then somebody mentioned to me at a public meeting that there was recently, that they heard about it on the radio. Now, how it got to a Brattleboro station, I don't know. But
Public meeting on,
in excuse me, Algiers Village.
oh, not, yeah.
Not
Not on
you know,
this,
not,
right.
but it was something else, and somebody said, "Oh, I heard about it on the radio," and I
Right.
don't know.
Well, if you,
PSA.
if you as a
Yes,
group believe that this is a better plan, all right, and you want me to reach out fairly broadly, I'd be happy to do that. I didn't wanna start talking about newspapers and radio or anything else,
Yeah.
if it wasn't an idea that
I think it should have.
I think it's
Well,
a great
and-
idea.
you thought
Yeah.
was valid.
What
Okay.
I hear over and over
More
again is, I
information.
didn't know, we didn't know where to get the information. It was
Where did
great that it was
come
in the
from?
paper.
How did
Yeah.
I
that
didn't
happen?
understand it. until
So
the
I think
meeting.
the
So
more
I'd
outreach.
rather have them be able to
Agreed.
read 2 or 3 articles,
Mhm.
and have A&R quoted and Shannon quoted and
Mhm.
That's
and,
awesome.
and others quoted, so that it's not just focused on the people who are directly impacted
Great.
on it.
But thank you, Steve, that's
Okay.
Yeah.
that's
Makes
super.
sense.
What a
clear.
lot of
Thanks.
work.
Well
Great, thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much.
So, the next item on the agenda is Town Fair and Voting Delegate. And there are, Peter put 4, we all received from VLCT, and Peter put 4 of the documents, the 4 documents that came into our folder. And we were asked to read through, and by September 1st, to read through the municipal guiding policies, which are 13 pages of legislative advocacy work that we would or would not support VLCT doing in all or in part or in some, and to return any proposals of amendment on the attached form by this Friday, September 1st. We also have to decide on who will serve as our delegate to vote in the annual meeting. But we don't need to do that until, we don't need to make that decision until September 27th. And we need to take advantage of the early registration discount to the town fair by September 15th. So the priority on this was to look at the 2018 draft municipal policy municipal guiding principles, and I welcome comment. No comment.
I don't have any amendments.
So I have a few comments. One is, I think that we have not, in my experience on the select board, we have not discussed the VLCT policy in previous years. One of the select board members has gone to the the annual meeting and represented Guilford, has been selected for a number of years, but we never took an active interest in the in the extensive legislative advocacy that VLCT is doing. So having said that, this is a really complex document and really detailed. And I actually asked Karen Horn, of the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy, some questions, but only this morning. And I would have been surprised if she answered. I did notice one thing that I thought we might be in agreement on, that relates to, let me see if I can find this. There are two references, one in the issue of public safety, and the other in the issue of telecommunications. There are two references to broadband, affordable broadband network, and more broadband access throughout the state to improve the economy, the safety and the economy of residents, and the economy of the state. And one of the things that we have talked about as a select board is that broadband, by the time the state gets broadband access throughout the state, it will be pretty close to antiquated technology, and that instead we should be looking at fiber optics. And so I wanted to know if the select board thought we should ask them to amend, just change from broadband networks to fiber optics networks throughout the state, because I think it has become clear to us in some of our educational economy meetings that we've had around the area that fiber optics is the investment to make, and that it seems silly to invest in one system that is guaranteed to be outdated in a few years. So
I think that's a very good point to be brought to their attention.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
We'll see what the reception is.
So, I mean, what I could do is, there's a form that allows us to make an amendment, and I could simply, based on a motion of the Select Board of Guilford, say we would ask them to change the focus from broadband to fiber optics with the understanding, are you getting, trying to like direct something?
No, I was not, I'm trying to capture the...
So, we might seek a motion to ask VLCT to amend their municipal policies to focus on access to fiber optics network throughout the state, rather than the more soon to be obsolete broadband network.
Which
network
page
access.
is that on? Is that
So there are
11?
two different pages. One is on page 7, that is item 3017. And the second 301, item 301, 3.017, subset 7, 8, sorry. And the second place that they mention fiber optics that I caught was in item 406, telecommunications.
Right, that's where I was looking.
Subset 1.
That's on page 11.
Yes. And so, but I think that it would just be a good thing. We've talked about it with SEVAs, we've talked about it with Wyndham Regional Commission, we've talked about it in a variety of economic meetings we've had, and that's something that we raised with Peter Welch about the infrastructure of the state back in the late winter, early spring. So, sorry, I sort of lost my wording here. To change the priority from broadband to fiber optics access throughout the state.
I move that we make that amendment, that we submit that amendment to the VLCT.
I'll second
You'll
that.
second. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Is there
And then I
anyone
will work
opposed?
on that tomorrow or Wednesday.
Was everyone...
Everyone
Yep.
voted. It was unanimous.
Okay.
So, we have
I just didn't hear everyone.
we have Jacob Boyd here. Is that Jacob Boyd?
No,
No.
Jacob Boyd is not
Jacob
here.
Boyd is not here.
He was not able to come, but I
Oh,
can still speak
so
to
you're
it.
still going to speak to that. Thank you.
I think it's certainly noted, or needs to be. So, after not having a constable for well over a year, as well as having a dog officer that stepped down for personal reasons last year. In March of this year, the select board appointed Jacob Boyd to be both constable and dog officer for the town, under stipulation that he would become recertified as a constable. We've had a number of dog complaints in the town since March of varying degrees of severity, and basically what I just want to say is that commend Jacob on doing an amazing job. I think that he's been an excellent choice for this. He's responded very promptly to residents. We've gotten several thank you cards on behalf of residents directed at Jacob. And the other thing I want to say is that he was actually further along in the process of becoming recertified to be
That's correct.
a law enforcement within the town than we initially thought to begin with. And so he's now completed all his training, and he has reached out to the state police academy, and we're just waiting official confirmation from them that he is able to practice independently. So I just want to commend Jacob for an excellent job, and let the town know that we have somebody who's really dedicated to what he's doing.
Wonderful, thank you.
And that's in addition to working a full-time job, so.
Plus,
Plus, yes.
plus, right?
Right, so does this need
No, we just,
Nope.
anything from us, just,
It's just kind of an update since
how, great.
there hasn't been an update in 6 months since appointing him to the position.
That's
I just wanted to let you guys know what's going on and that he's doing a very excellent job.
Good news.
absolutely. Thank you, Peter. The next thing is signatures on the updated RERP grant, and there was a lag in communications to get out the applications, the grant applications for the second year of the Vermont Yankee emergency response plan. It came when I was on vacation, and it had a 2-day deadline. So I and a bunch of other people said, could we, postpone it? And so I did it as the interim emergency management director. I submitted the grant on time, but the time frame was such that it was in between select board meetings. So I applied for the second year of a $15,000 emergency grant to the town. I applied as the interim emergency management director, and I signed as the chair of the select board. So I would like authorization, a confirmation of that signature by the board for that grant application for the $15,000 for the
Do you
town.
need a motion?
Well, can we find out what the grant application was, what the commitment to the town will be, and like what?
It's identical to the 2017 grant.
I don't remember that.
It's for $15,000. It covers personnel, training,
Supplies.
procurement of supplies, contracts like a generator contract, and it's,
Purchasing some
I'm missing
equipment.
something else.
Purchasing equipment.
I think, equipment, supplies, contracts, personnel, training,
And that's it.
so,
And
This
there's no
year,
commitment on behalf of the town?
I'm sorry?
There's no commitment on behalf of the town to do anything?
No,
No, just to spend the money.
yeah.
That's a good commitment.
So it's continuing to update the Emergency Operations Center. It is committing to to gathering the volunteers that I connected with back in April to have a communications training session and to perhaps to do a desktop table session. It's getting emergency recording kits into the highway crews trucks. It is continuing to update the radio service that we have. It's making sure that we have a generator here if we need it as a backup. So we're continuing on those projects that we laid out in fiscal year 2016.
Are these funds coming from from
Vermont Yankee
from-
funds?
Part of
but the fund that they created
Correct, that's correct.
Yes.
to give grant out for communities
Right, and
when they closed,
the
when they
6 towns
decommissioned.
around
Yeah.
are the recipients of these funds.
Yeah, okay.
So,
And so they spell out the kinds of things that,
Mhm.
okay.
Sheila, is there any reporting requirement?
yes, this year there is a reporting requirement. So Peter and I have a log tracking time and activities and commitments that we made, like I said we'll try to do a desktop table exercise by January. So I have to, and then I report back to, I've said that I'll report to the select board and then to the, and use that as a report to the, whatever committee, the grantors.
What's a desktop table exercise?
Maybe I'm using, so you
I mean,
have an
the
exercise.
short version.
You have an exercise that you sit around a table and act as if you are dealing with a real
Okay.
emergency.
It's a
Got
virtual,
it.
it's
All
a
right.
virtual incident.
No, I get it.
But
And
it's only around a
response.
table. Last year, 2016, was an exercise with all kinds of parties, and it was statewide and stuff like that.
Okay.
And Guilford participated, so.
Can I ask one more question? Isn't Peter the emergency manager?
No, we have never named Peter Emergency Management
Okay.
Director. He
Oh.
he's gone through the training, but we haven't gotten there yet, and we just haven't discussed it.
Okay. Does he need to have the training before we can appoint him?
I did
Yes.
need to have the training.
He did have to have the training.
Which has been completed.
Yeah. And there's still some transition issues that haven't been resolved before. I feel like we're ready to make that transition, so that's why I haven't brought it up as a agenda item for the.
Gotcha.
So, Richard,
I so move.
you moved to approve retroactively the
Second.
signatures.
The signatures.
And Gordon seconded.
Okay.
Any
Can
more
I have one more
discussion?
I guess I'm wondering what the process, like, why are we retroactively approving the signature? My understanding of the process is we should have either voted or done it by email vote and then retroactively approved signatures.
Can we vote by email?
If it's an
Emergency situation,
Oh.
yes.
Cheapers.
I'm not sure that we actually need a vote on this. I'm just
okay.
being, in abundance of caution, asking for it. I don't recall that we voted on this last year.
Well, that's what I was just gonna
What-
ask.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we did.
But I
last
did,
year.
I
Because
sort of
it's
thought,
just
you
a-
know,
it's a
because I was
grant.
It's a
signing.
grant, so.
Yeah.
We don't need a select board motion to apply for a grant.
And it occurred to me that I was signing in two capacities this year, so I thought maybe just
No,
to
you're
update
covering
people
your-
and make sure everybody knew what was happening. I wanted to be careful. Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I can't do that, I'm sorry. I abstain.
You have to abstain.
You're recusing yourself.
I know abstaining on this.
Okay.
The next item before the board is to discuss the VSA 24 and flood hazard review board, the creation of a development review board or a flood hazard review board. And we tabled this item last year because people had last meeting because people had not had a time to read the documents. I think the key documents were Peter's summary, and in which he recommended that we create a flood review board. And the one that let me see if I can find the other one, where I talked about a development review board, but, and talked about the planning commission's responses. So I would like to know if people have had a chance to read this and if there are questions or proposal or reactions.
So, as I recall, because I read them some time ago, what your comments seemed to say was that it should be, that you were recommending a development review board, which is the planning commission, basically.
No.
No,
No,
am I getting that mixed up?
I changed it to, should we do as a development, should we consider either a development review board or a flood review board? And so I amended my notes after reading Peter's stuff and doing some more things. And I can go through it really quickly.
Yes, please.
We can choose to appoint either a development review board or a flood review board. Or we can, and assign this responsibility to the planning commission.
Right, that's what
So we can either appoint independent people or the planning commission. And select board members are by statute, non-voting ex officio members of a planning commission. The flood administrator may not be a member of either a development review board or a board of adjustment.
Or the flood hazard review board.
On the flood review board. Michelle, the planning commission said, she thinks it would be good to have a development review board. Let me know if I can help, and then I looked at the planning commission's mandate, and it says they may prepare and present proposed bylaws to the select board. They may be called upon to administer those bylaws that are adopted. They are authorized to undertake studies and make recommendations on matters of land development, urban renewal, transportation, economic and social development, blah, blah. And they may be called on to prepare and present a budget. So I think the scope of the Planning Commission's mandate includes them serving as a flood review board, which, because of Peter's recommendations, where did they go? Let's see. We should have done this in 2007 when we had the original floodplain bylaws created, and so we have been out of compliance with those for 10 years. And let's see, Peter, you had another really good point in here.
Oh, Dropbox.
Sheila, I might offer a couple observations.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's mandatory that to be part of the National Flood Insurance Program that you have at least a flood hazard review board. The difference in the numbers are that a flood hazard review board, the minimum is 3 members and a maximum of 9. A full development review board is a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 9. So just a couple.
Right.
Well, where this specifically is talking about the flood side of things, it makes sense to me that we just have a flood review board.
Right.
In simplicity.
And the fact that we have no other zoning.
Right, that's
we
my-
have
exactly.
no need at this time for development
Right.
review board.
And I think calling it a development review board, which we can, it might add the wrong
Well,
message.
if that's
It's
what you call it, then you
unnecessary.
have to, because that's specifically
It has
kind
a
of
broader range
defined
of.
Right, so my
by the state
recommendation,
legislation. I would say call it the flood hazard.
flood,
review.
right.
And at least one person from, up to all of the planning commission may be appointed to it, but a
Mhm.
minimum of 1 planning commission member has to be a part of it.
Gotcha. Well, that would make sense.
And so is there any funding to oversee the work of that board,
It's
or
like
it's
the
just?
Board of Civil Authority that, it's all volunteer.
Yeah.
If I could add to that, on the flood hazard review board, by the time that board of 3 people minimum has to meet, it will have already come from a decision by me, having gone to the Agency of Natural Resources, having gone back to an appeal, back to me, back to the Agency of Natural Resources, and then ultimately coming to this board. So unless I am sadly mistaken, I do not think that this board will be overtaxed.
Oh, okay.
In addition to that, if I can add, Steve, that the flood hazard review board also has to appoint an administrator to do their administration for them. And that person would coordinate with Steve in the work that he does as a floodplain coordinator. And so that's an additional step. So if it's
Steve
found that
does
Steve has
a
made
good
something
job.
egregious, then there's the flood hazard review board administrator. And then if that person feels that they certainly can't make a decision or have been
I
found
see.
at fault, then it goes to the board. But it should be taken care of long before it ever gets to that.
Okay.
So the presumption is that the responsibility of that board, as far as a volume of work, will be low.
So I'd like to make the motion that we create a flood hazard review board.
That we assign
Yes.
within, that the planning commission would serve as the flood hazard review board, or the,
I wouldn't do that. I would, as Peter just outlined, one person from the planning commission could be a part of this. You're saying it reads.
That's great. That's what the state legislature, the minimum of
But-
one person has to be.
I think it ought to be a separate entity aside from the planning commission.
I agree, and I think maybe members from the Conservation Commission.
Yeah, well, that's another one, sure.
Okay, I like the Flood Hazard Review Board because it's clear as to what the scope is. It doesn't give
Right.
anyone any pause. And then it has fewer members, and I like having a combination of not just the planning commission.
Are we gonna be able to populate it, do you think?
Yeah, I wonder.
Well, if we have three people and we have one from, at least one from
Conservation
planning,
Commission, one from the
two
planning.
from conservation or vice
whatever,
versa, then that's.
What's the minimum? Is there?
Minimum is 3.
Oh, okay, that's good.
It's 3 to 9 members.
Yeah.
So,
I think Steve had something. he
I'm
wanted
getting,
to-
sorry. Steve?
I would suggest one from the planning commission, one from the conservation commission, and one from the community at large. All
I
right, so,
think that's a good
so
suggestion.
that it's not just of the common cluster.
Right.
Yep.
No, I like that.
And do we think that 3 is a sufficient number
I
for
do.
this review board?
Yes.
Because any of you can sit ex officio, you know, I can comment, it's a, you know,
Yeah.
and to give you an example, the type of thing that might come up is if somebody was claiming that their property or their building or their land was of a historical nature that neither I nor A&R nor somebody else believed was, and it was that, they might come to this board and say,
Mhm.
we want to prove to you why this is a historical structure and should be, you know, should be outside the normal restrictions.
That's a good recommendation.
So I believe the motion is to create a flood hazard review board with 3 members, 1 from the planning commission, 1 from the conservation, and 1 from the community at large, 2, period. Sorry.
Period.
That's right.
Provided they are willing to
With, yes,
take, I mean, that somebody
Yes.
from the
The
Conservation
responsibility.
Commission would take that on. Because and it has to be done before we can proceed with the potential bylaw, so there's a little bit of a time
okay.
crunch to do
I
this.
don't think, I think both of those, the planning commission and the conservation
Mhm.
commission would be very happy to support that.
Well, let's pass the motion.
Does somebody,
Well,
would somebody,
I so move.
Richard is so moving,
And I'll.
and Miranda is so seconding.
I
You're so
moved it.
slow tonight.
I moved it!
Oh, you moved.
Oh, I
I'm
created,
sorry,
I
dear, you
created
moved.
it. No. I'm just kidding.
So has moved to appoint, or to create,
You going, Scott?
I'm going, yes, gotta get home to some dogs.
Mhm.
Did you have something you wanted to bring up?
No, just curious,
Thanks for coming.
just being a, involved town
A
member.
good
Awesome.
Guilford citizen.
That's right.
Yeah, it was under.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. See you later.
I think we need to take a vote. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is signing the amended procurement policy.
just a moment.
Is that an actual signing, or do we have to
Yes.
discuss it?
No, there's no
I'm gonna
discussion.
suggest that
Okay, I
we
will-
table it because this
It
is
doesn't need to be
not
tabled.
a policy format. It needs some editing before we sign it. This is the
Thi-
one I was trying to find today.
This is the policy that already
Procurement
existed,
policy.
and this is the manner in which it was originally written. And all I did is add the amendment that you guys approved previously. To section 4, part B, to add portion 3, which was regular highway department purchases totaling $10,000 or less should be exempt from the competitive bid process. You guys already approved that.
Mhm.
This is the existing bylaw with that amendment, and it just needs your signature, so there is no,
So, okay, I'm uncomfortable with putting something on Guilford letterhead as opposed to all the other formats. I'm uncomfortable with something that says purpose. The purpose of this policy is to create the purpose of this policy is to create a process for purchasing goods and services that B, will increase efficiency, blah, blah, and C, necessary supplies and services. It's just untidy. So if we are amending it with
Well,
the
then you'll need to-
amendment, we should also clean up the formatting of it just a little bit to put it on. I mean, we have noticed that we have other policies and ordinances where the languages, there are mistakes in it, and I think if we're putting an amended policy up, it should be neat and,
well, you did not
I'm
make
sorry,
any other amendments to this policy at that time. So I made the single amendment that was approved
think-
by the select board, and you guys just need to sign it.
So let's sign this, and then if we need to, because we already moved, it's a
You're-
done deal.
It's already a done deal.
So, and then
it
if you
looks
suggest.
very different here, Peter, on the town, that's, on the town website. The formatting is not this, and that's why I'm saying, that
So
something.
did you pull down the wrong thing?
I don't know.
No,
but this
so-
is,
And then this must, from the uploading it into online.
that's what I'm saying. I mean,
Well, why don't,
I
We already
can,
moved, so we can just.
so the signature page is in and of itself separate. I can adjust the formatting of it
yeah, I mean,
on
we
section
approved-
1 and
okay.
2. It's just a simple formatting issue. I will adjust.
Okay, I'm just uncomfortable putting this up there when this is, then it looks different from the original.
No,
and-
It
That's fine.
was a simple mistake, formatting
Yeah, no
mistake.
worries. That's fine.
But
Okay.
nothing has changed. I will fix the formatting on page 1.
Okay, so all we need to do is sign because, and note that the formatting will be,
Yep.
And that was a good change.
thank you, yes. I'm gonna give you a minute.
All right, I will make that change
Thank you very
tomorrow.
much. FEMA disaster grant and the state grant.
So as,
Okay, this is.
thank you.
Some of these things are signed here underneath.
That's it. All right, so as was discussed at the last select board meeting, Dan and I informed everyone that it was found by the state that Windham County as a whole, as well as Guilford, was not eligible for any of the FEMA funding from the storm at the end of June and beginning of July. However, we did receive communication from the state that there would be potential that we are available for state funding, and so I did reach out to the state to find out about that. And this is true, so there's a slight caveat to that in that Dan and the crew cannot have already completed the work. So I've already begun a conversation with Dan to consider projects, or a project most likely, that can be done to apply for this state funding from that storm. And we identified the primary one was a culvert up on Carpenter Hill Road. 2 culverts, that's right.
Yeah, 'cause I called Megan the other day and had her do the other one too.
Okay, great.
They're backlogged on their hydraulic, their
Sure.
hydraulic studies, so it'll probably be sometime this fall.
So that was, so Dan and I spoke about it when we had a meeting last week about something else, and we went out and looked at it, and so part of the process is we need to have a hydrologic study done by the state.
And what's the deadline for the grant application? Like, do we need to get something in a certain amount of time?
Not that I've seen as of yet,
Mm-hmm.
because the state just got the federal declaration, so they're finalizing that process, and so this is tied to but separate from that process, because this is state money, that is federal money, and so that will go to the counties that have received that federal declaration,
Okay.
which we were not.
There is a date, I'm sorry, towns
There
have
was-
30 days from August 16th to submit a request for public assistance to the state. So that was the,
Which I've already begun that process. That was my initial email.
yeah.
So we just have to formalize it, but they know that we're going to do so. So, yeah,
Excellent.
which is that process I informed you of last week.
Mhm.
And what's the amount for what is the amount of the grant? What are they not offering?
No,
Granting.
Yes.
Usually it's a 90-10.
Yep.
Our match is 10, theirs is 90.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I was under the impression that this one was 80-20,
It could be,
is what this one was.
Well,
Better
still
than
good.
nothing.
Still-
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
it's in process. I will inform you all once we know more, but it's just to
Okay.
provide you with information.
Moving on. Wyndham Solid Waste Management. So at our last meeting, we asked Cheryl to answer questions about the formula for calculating a fee for withdrawal from the Waste Management District. And what does the fee cover? How does the fee impact towns the fee, what's the impact of the fee on towns remaining in the district going forward? And what, is there a similar fee if another town would decide to do that? And is there anything else we forgot to ask? So the charter says that towns that, so she sent me a bunch of information and asked some questions, and this will come up again on the August 31st meeting. The district, the terminating municipality must agree with the district to pay its share of any financial obligations incurred by the district up to the point of termination, including its share of obligations subject to annual appropriations up to the effective date of withdrawal, its share of all existing indebtedness incurred by the district and obligations under long-term contracts, and then any direct, incidental, and consequential costs resulting from its withdrawal. So the exit costs are prorated by town based on their percent of the total population of district member towns. So Guilford is currently at 5.78. That's our percentage. This is with Winhall gone, but not Whitingham. So if once Whitingham exits, our percentage will increase. Items considered for exit costs include the MRF closing costs, loans and interest, estimated workman's comp for future 3 years, post-closure fund borrowing, and total deficits for fiscal years 15 through 17. Guilford does not have to pay MRF closing costs as we are currently paying our share through the special assessment this 1 year. We will also be paying Wyndham Solid Waste will also be paying off the loan in March of 2018. The total post-closure borrowing is $130,000 and the 3-year deficit totals $234,000. They have decided that only 6 months of the workman's comp would be required. None of this is written in stone and it must be voted on at the August 31st board meeting. It's costing Whitingham to exit this year $5,000 based on a population percentage of 3.62, and it will cost Winhall, based on a smaller percentage, down to 2.05 from 3.62, but it will cost them $7,000. So the figures are different based on the times. The figures are higher based on the times of withdrawal. So there is a meeting on August 31st to talk about this, and I believe because of the contract that we signed to become members of the district, there is no choice as long as we continue to pay our annual fee as members of the district, and if we decide at some point that we want to exit, it requires a special town meeting to do that, but and we'd have to have a lot of, we'd have to have big discussions about what we want to do instead. I think at this point we just wait to see how they.
And the cost would be about $8,000 to $10,000 to get out, it sounds like.
Well, just clarify those numbers. The 5.78% of the 234,000 and the 100.
No, everything. The MRF closing costs, the loans, interest,
Right.
workman's comp, post-closure fund borrowing, and total deficit. So
but you have these two numbers.
the 3-year deficit is 234, and the post-closure borrowing is 130. So that's
364,000.
Make it 365,000.
So we're talking, I mean, if I did the numbers based on 234 and 130, so that would be $2,100. I mean, $21,000.
But that's so different from
Right.
the
Yeah.
other towns.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I guess because our 5.78.
So it
It's a
seems
lot
like
higher than Winhall.
our annual assessments, we can expect an increase, right? Because
Yes.
towns are pulling out.
Mhm.
I think we will.
And then I would expect that the later we wait to withdraw,
Yeah,
the higher it's
21,000.
going to cost, because again, we're gonna have
Right.
if it's based on percentages, our percentages are gonna start
Right,
going
we
up.
have to take into account the cost of withdrawing. I mean, the other cost besides financial.
Right.
So I think the meeting on August 31st will inform our budget, our fiscal year 2019 budget.
And what is our standing at that meeting on the 31st? Are we just getting information at that meeting?
It is, let me see if I can see, look, I just got the agenda, I think, yesterday or today, so let me see. The special board meeting will include discussion of Whitingham and Windhelm estimate withdrawal costs. And that's
basically what the meeting is about.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we have obligations, it's $25,000.
Is it? So that's what it is. It comes down
Yeah.
to we'd have to give up 1 year of.
So I think, based on this sort of background information, which I don't think any of us have a really good grasp of, that one of our next work sessions should be looking at this together with Cheryl and looking at our options and what our costs and what the impact of the town is going to be and stuff like that. I think we're just not prepared to have that discussion, any part of that discussion tonight. So
I agree.
maybe we could set one up for end of September. Mr. Zambreski, highway update.
How are you?
I'm just bad. How are you?
Yeah.
Well, the general update is we've been hauling sand, we've been grading some roads, setting culverts, just the typical normal stuff. And we're still mowing, so we'll be doing that for another couple more weeks and should be all done. So, other than that, that's about all I got. Just doing the normal routine maintenance. And then last Thursday, Peter and I and Emily from Wyndham Regional came out and we did the grant that we got, the $20,000 grant.
Mhm.
We went and looked at some potential sites, and she did some measurements and pictures, and we got the okay to start on a couple of them sites, so.
Is that the Better Rose grant or something
Yeah.
that we got it in two
No,
sections?
It's
It's
the
not,
grants
it's the
and
grant
aid.
and aid.
No,
It's
that,
I'm sorry,
It's the
it's,
grants and aid.
It's the grants and aid.
yeah, that grant was the one you just told me about a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
Yeah. The other Better Back Road's one for the backside of Green River Hill, and over by, on the other side of the covered bridge. I have not started because we haven't had the time, so. And I think I got 2 years to get it completed by, on that.
maybe. I'm wondering if that's the one that we talked about that had to be completed in fiscal year 2000, or
Yeah,
at least a portion of it had to be.
I contacted him and asked him, and he was busy today, so I didn't hear back from him.
Okay. So Katie asked me about it recently, and I said, I did not know, but her vague recollection was that there was a 2-section road grant.
Yes, it was.
And the work needed to be completed in fiscal year 2017, or we, Gave up the grant, so I think sorry?
It probably ain't gonna get done then.
Then we need to dig it up and,
To see what, we had to dig it up,
look
see
what
what
we're
the
losing.
timeline that
Yeah.
is on it.
because I think that's a pretty critical, I mean, I know you had the June storm and stuff like that, and maybe there's a possibility of extending the,
That's if we have to dig it up and find
but I
out.
think it's a high priority
Yeah.
to see, because that's another grant that we certainly don't want to lose those funds
Right.
for the town.
And then the other question, Peter, when you texted me about the bushes.
Yep.
Those are on private property,
Oh, they are,
yes.
okay,
And that would be something that somebody would have to talk to the landowner.
okay.
So,
Good,
But would it be
thank you.
V-Trans?
No,
No, it's a
that's-
private property
Private
owner.
No, I understand it's private property, but that's V-Trans,
That's on
Vermont
some,
State Road,
that's on somebody's private property.
but it's not, so the concern raised, that somebody contacted me about is that there's hedges and some growth that prevents, that doesn't allow for it, the prescribed for 200-foot sight
But
line.
that's nothing to do with our,
I understand that's not,
So-
but I can't believe that
I'm not going down there and cut somebody's bushes
I'm
on
not
their
asking
property.
you, no, I
Is it
think,
a state road or a town road?
It's a
It's a
state road, it's off
Can you-
Route 5.
Where it is, yeah.
There you go.
so there is a state road, and I'm just
So
wondering if the
it-
state,
That would be, but if there was an issue other than, if the landowner doesn't wanna touch the bushes, that would be a V-Trans
That would be a reason.
discussion, not a town
right, and I don't
discussion.
think it's the town's, so a resident asked me about that, and I said, it's probably a state issue, could be private property. might be the town, I don't think so, but we need to find out and then have the proper authority contact the landowner.
Right.
And if they are in fact violation, we're not here to make a determination if they're in violation. They're in violation of our road
Right.
ordinances, but maybe not.
But if it had been a town road,
State,
it would
yeah.
have been something. You're
Yes.
right, you're absolutely right.
So that was just,
So
Well,
someone can
thank you
contact
for-
V-Trans? Can Peter contact V-Trans just to close the loop?
I planned on it. I had reached out to Dan and he was busy today, and so I hadn't heard back from him yet. And so that was going to be the next step after hearing back, having a conversation with him.
finance. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, did we miss something?
I just had a side comment, that from a resident's side, if it's not a town road and the town has no responsibility in it, it seems like the resident should be told it's not a town road. Here are some recommendations, some recommended agencies to contact, not that we would contact the agencies and ask them to get in touch with the landowner, unless you really want it to go in that way. It seems like it puts the town in a proactive position, in a position in which the town has no standing whatsoever, much less a dog in that fight.
That's a very good point, Steve.
So just to identify the agency and get back to the resident?
Yeah.
So it is V-Trans, because it is a state highway.
So we all set?
Thank you.
I can leave?
You
I
can,
think so.
thanks, Dan.
Have a good night.
Good night, Dan.
I'll go over in the morning to do that.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Thank
Right.
you.
Have a good night.
Oh, before we do the this isn't really on the agenda, but, is anybody going to the rescue meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that let everybody know that I was gonna do that, but maybe I'll let Peter know.
Yeah, I don't think I need
August 31st.
Thursday.
and I could go if you.
No, I think last year we either didn't get or missed the invitation, so this year they've sent it twice. So that's good.
Well,
And I'll go.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, finance, Gabby.
Make the motion to pay the following payroll and warrants. Payroll for the week ending August 20th, 2017 in the amount of $6,337.79. Payroll for the week ending August 27th, 2017 in the amount of $5,446.36. Expense warrant 1804B in the amount of $13,779.83, and expense warrant DP 1804 in the amount of $123 for a grand total of $25,686.98. No huge invoices on the expense warrants, mostly payments on health insurance for employees and reappraisal costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you for
Do you need a second?
checking
Did
it.
you just make a motion?
I made a motion.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Guilford Central School, 250, Peter, I put that on for you.
Yeah.
Did not remember what it was about.
It's
It's in the paper today.
Was it?
Yeah.
I think
I didn't see the paper today.
It was. So
Project review sheet?
it's not even an Act 250 permit as of yet. It's a project review sheet for the school.
Something different.
And it's relating to their water, wastewater system and potable water supply. And so they are requesting an increase or addition of 15 pre-K students to the school. And so they
I
have
thought
to.
we discussed this last.
No, we were supposed to.
We were
It was in the
supposed to.
folder, and
Oh.
I skipped over it on the
Okay.
agenda.
It was just omitted. So it's simply notifying the town that they have approached the state for permission to do so.
Is that different? I thought I said no Act 250 was required,
That's what I
Maybe.
thought.
but maybe it's a different document. I thought there was a
Yes.
jurisdictional opinion.
Yeah,
That's
that's
correct.
what I was
That's what I thought
remembering.
too.
Yeah.
Yes, according to Act 250, Rule 3B.
So we don't have, there's no action.
There's no
There's
Act
never,
250.
there's almost
There's-
never an action.
This is a communication.
Yeah.
It's a communication.
And
I got
then
the communication.
Gabby had some article in the
Oh,
Refomer.
okay.
Nope, I just got this passed through me from Jen Stromson, that just notify the select board that there was an article in the Refomer about,
Oh, my goodness.
I think it's Caleb's
Yep.
experience
Yeah.
at his internship this summer.
Oh, great.
I'd like to read it, so.
When was that?
August 7th.
Because I was.
Oh, I know, I was away,
Oh, yeah,
so that's why I didn't
please.
see it.
Signatures,
Oh,
please.
yes.
Can I ask, does anyone have an update? I know I ran into Sue McMahon last week, and she asked me if I was going, and I couldn't go to the, there was a public meeting about the living community, or what was going on in Algiers.
So there was a meeting on August 16th, and it was, the invitation was sent out to lots and lots of people. It was in the Refomer, and it was a public meeting to solicit input. So I think if you remember that as a member of the Friends of Algiers Village Board, I reported to the Select Board on the 2 or 3 meetings that the
There's
nonprofits
only 2 to sign.
that relate to
And
projects.
then there's 2.
Sorry to interrupt.
So, the nonprofits that are working on different projects in Algiers Village that have gotten together to consider whether to be part of this Living Communities Challenge. And I said, the next step after these initial exploration meetings will be to invite the public to provide the same sort of input that the nonprofit organizations have started working on. So to talk about what you really like about Village of Algiers, what don't you like, what would you like to see, what's your vision. And it was just kind of roundtable discussions that were free-flowing, and there were probably 40 or 50 people who showed up for a couple hours, and we had several, 1, 2, 3, maybe 6 different tables of 8 to 10 people talking, and then Wyndham Regional Commission are taking the maps and the notes from that meeting, and they'll report out to the community on what came out of that meeting. And it's another step of, what is it that Algiers Village wants to be? Do they want to be part of this process? So it's still, as I said, probably 47 years in the making if we ever get there, but it was just another step in that process, and it was really great to see so many people there. And one of the reasons I mentioned tonight about communications is because a lot of people didn't know about it or didn't know about it in advance. And so the Planning Commission has struggled with communication. How do we get the information out in a timely way, and through which channels? And then, everybody gets information through different channels. And so people were sorry to have missed this, some of them, or would have liked to have known about it sooner. And so it's just an ongoing challenge in this community, how to communicate with everybody about everything,
So
So
450 people is a good turnout.
I thought it was a great turnout, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there are more people who would have
I
come.
know, right?
In Algiers?
No, it wasn't only Algiers. This was sent out to Front Porch Forum.
Oh, okay.
It was,
The meeting
No,
was
there was a
Algiers.
lot, I saw it, I saw it
Yeah.
in various places.
So I'm just saying that, yeah, some of us might be looking for it, and other people weren't. But it was a really good section of the community. There were planning commission members. There was a planning commission member there. Anyway, it was a positive meeting. I don't have a report yet because there isn't, and I don't know any of the outcomes other than the people at my table. So, Steve.
I did communicate to the board that the Green River Village Preservation Trust had a celebration picnic on Sunday to celebrate the restoration of the bridge and the sediment removal behind the dam. I think for the first time in years, the village is actually back to what it was, 10 years ago. So, and in particular, thanking Peter, Sheila for your attention to that picnic, and also Gabby for being there and representing the board and making some really good comments. And I think it was a very collegial group and a very positive event to have to sort of bring all of this things to closure. So it was, thanks again for doing it.
I told Katie about it, Steve. She was distressed not to have known about it.
Oh, sorry.
But it looked like a fun group. Next item on the agenda is outstanding items before the select board, and I think you've all probably had a chance to review this list, and I don't know if you have any questions. This is a list that's still being constructed. Peter and I are working on different parts of this to make sure that it's comprehensive, but I think Peter did a good job of getting things out there for us to consider.
And it's good that we have this on the agenda every meeting.
And as of this moment, there are no updates on the items here for the time being.
We'd like to see some of them disappear.
Yes.
Yes, we would.
Mm-hmm.
Can we get can we get moving on the capital needs assessment? That seems very timely, and it's been pending for 2 years. Is that some, I mean, we don't even need a motion on that one.
It's
something we can
definitely
move forward
on
on?
Peter's list of priorities, and yes.
Sorry,
Is that something we can move forward on, like?
is that something that needs to be rewritten considering the amount of time that has passed, or is it something?
I don't know, we made the motion, so.
It doesn't need to be rewritten, it needs to be acted on.
So, do we have, I mean, if, to put it into action, do we need to have a specific person to do this assessment? I mean, I don't think I
So,
was part of,
Brenda, there is a policy, it outlines the steps for
Oh,
an
is that
RFP
on-
for a capital needs assessment. It is a policy that the select board has not, the select board through the
okay.
town administrator, not through, when we first did it with in 2015, not in 2016, and not yet this year. It has not risen to the level of priority that has been taken action on. It is something that Peter and I are talking about. We have a
Okay.
draft of an RFP to send to a set of recommended assessors who would help us out. It would have been great if we had it before the town office, but we didn't. And the purpose of this is to make sure that we are proactive in planning for caring for the town assets.
no, I
So,
understand that.
So it's a getting
Okay,
to a high priority for Peter. To
So
follow
that's
through.
the answer to your question, isn't it? I mean, it's a high priority.
Right, I'm saying, because I feel like it can inform how we decide to spend money on the town office.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
can we,
So it goes together with that.
that's sort of what I'm heading towards, how do we figure out how to spend our money? And it might be that if we know how we need to spend money in other buildings, that would inform our decision about what we do on this one. That's my only suggestion, so I'm suggesting that if we have something already, if we have something ready to go and we had a motion, it's already been moved upon, can we do it, or?
I don't think we need a motion, Gabby. I think
No, I
it
don't
needs
think
to
we
be done.
Right,
So that,
Yes,
yeah, we haven't
right.
done, we haven't
Yeah.
completed the
So-
improvement, or the
I think
capital
it just needs to be
needs
put out to
assessment.
bid. Is that, am I
Yes.
understanding that correctly?
Has there been any changes since it was originally
Well,
drafted?
we need to review it. It's been a
Well, that's
year
why I
and a
was
half
just
since
asking
it's
you
been
about
reviewed.
it.
Not to the policy, the RFP.
So I guess my point is, like, I feel like if we do this concurrently, then we would have a very informed basis of knowledge
Mhm.
about what we could do capital-wise on our buildings.
What we have to do, what we should do, yeah.
So I'm
What it's gonna
suggesting that
cost,
if we spring into action now, then we would have that
Mhm.
going on concurrently with, the town office bid, and then we would have a broader perspective.
Yep.
And be able to better manage our finances.
mhm.
And
So I'm wondering if this could go to the number one priority. I don't know what else is pending right now on Peter's plate, but I'm just wondering if this can be,
Be elevated, so.
exactly.
And how, I mean, just simply, how complicated is an RFP for a capital needs
It's
assessor?
written. It needs to be
Hated it.
reviewed
Oh,
to make
I mean,
sure.
I
So
literally
can
think-
we ask that you review it
And put,
and report back to us?
On the next
The
meeting?
status?
and can we get a final draft for our next meeting so that we can push this forward expeditiously? Because then we would have an expert telling us what our buildings need and what timetable and what the estimated cost would be.
Yes. Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I think it's one of the that and making sure that we take advantage of the grants that we have and that we are reading about grants that come through or the possible grants and that we are not missing out. I think those are that's like the top two priorities right now.
So is that viable? I don't know what else is on Peter's plate, but is that viable for him to do by the next meeting and do the grants related work that he's already been tasked with?
In my
That's my
opinion,
question.
yes. I
Okay.
think working with Peter, yes.
Great. So we'll look for that next meeting.
Well, thank you.
I think that we
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Let's go, Veranda.